Since we've talked about games that were completed and cancelled, I suppose this would allow for a vague segue into something else we've been talking about among ourselves for a while, which is the first releases from well-known developers. In the case of Blizzard, although they weren't at Blizzard at the time, I believe Joel has a particularly fine example of their first big box PC game.
At the time, they were called Silicon and Synapse. This was their first PC game. Lost Vikings, just an awesome game. It's kind of a side-scroll puzzler, way higher quality than you'd expect a first game from a company to be.
And they're so proud of it that you can even still download it for free, thanks Blizzard, from the Blizzard Classics site.
Absolutely, and it still holds up today. I mean, you can sit down and play this right now, and it's completely modern feeling. There's nothing. I mean, the graphics are 16-bit looking, but otherwise, just.
I'm quite surprised no one's had a stab at a phone conversion.
There are, I think, some similar ones, but nothing that has ever been as enjoyable as that.
Really, these type of games weren't super common on PC. Anything that was like high-res graphic side-scroll type of game, they just, for some reason, unless they were like Apogee releases or something, they just didn't come out very often for PC. And it was just really cool.
You got a lot of that sort of thing on the Amiga, which is kind of what got me started on this. Hey, look at this really early example of a game from a well-known company thing. Because I've been building an Amiga emulator lately, and I got into playing Zombie from 1986, which is an Ubisoft game. In fact, it's Ubisoft's first game, and it's very overtly draws on Dawn of the Dead. You have four characters who you can switch between, and you wander this zombie-filled shopping mall. But I will note that it's really interesting because there were 4 developers, and each of the characters in the game is kind of inspired by one of the developers.
I'd never put 2 and 2 together on this, but their first game was Zombie, and then they're also the people who made
Zombie U.
Yeah, and they renamed it when they re-released it to just Zombie. Absolutely, I'd never put 2 and 2 together on it. It's very cool.
Yeah, the intellectual property lives on.
And of course, if you do a Google search on it, all you get is stuff on the new one.
So according to Moby Games, it says that the only one that came out in 1986 was the Amstrad, and the other port was 1990. Is that true, KG?
Yes, it was originally an Amstrad game, as far as I know. I was familiar with its Amiga release. Amstrad's quite an odd platform. I have to say there are relatively few games that you can say first saw the light of day on the Amstrad CPC.
I mean, the Amstrad was not a bad computer. It just the problem with the Amstrad is it basically only got ports from the Spectrum instead of getting its own games for the most part. So,
but
anyway.
As you say, this was interestingly an Amstrad original.
Yeah.
It's kind of an action game, and you can use items. There are guns.
Looks a little like Deja Vu also. Looks like some kind of adventure game too.
It's a little bit adventure-y, but there aren't really any puzzles as such.
Yeah, they're not very.
Headshots.
They're not super like threatening, are they? Those guys.
Bree, I believe you had Epic Mega Games' first release.
Yes, Epic Games, their first one was a shareware game called ZZT.
That's such a catchy name.
I enjoyed back in, I think it was 1992.
Copyright 1991, Epic Mega
You see what it said? If you see something unusual, try touching it. The worst that can happen is death.
So you leave the room you're walking in by walking off the edge, save off.
ZZT, the object-oriented game. Just about everything can and probably will happen.
Along the same lines as Epic Mega Games, I was looking up ID Software. Their first game was technically, this was before they were actually ID, was that Dangerous Dave and copyright infringement. And
that's not a released game, though.
No, but that was technically their first game that they worked on. Which the kind of more interesting part of that is that they then went on to make a Super Mario Bros. 3 clone, which they pitched to Nintendo and to release on the PC, and Nintendo turned them down. what they were able to accomplish at the time was just absolutely incredible graphically. I guess this is, John Carmack's just a freaking genius. But I mean, look at this. This is for DOS,
Is this the one they actually pitched at Nintendo and said we will port Super Mario Brothers 3 for you?
Yep. And Nintendo told them that their properties would only appear on Nintendo machines and turn them down, which is fine. That's their thing. But
it's not true either, because they did release a bunch of Mario PC games right around that time.
Yeah.
They were terrible.
But yeah, I have Mario is Missing. I have it back
Mario's
there.
Time Machine. Did this evolve?
We will now stop while we all feel incredibly old.
Did this evolve into Commander Keen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, they
The
used the
scrolling
same
looks
kind of
very
technology
similar.
for Commander Keen. So what was id Software's actual first game? Was it Commander Keen?
Yeah, their first game was another shareware one like Epic, which was Commander Keen, and
Yeah,
that helped pay for other shareware ones like Wolfenstein 3D, just like Epic had Jewel of the Jungle and eventually Ken's
Although
Labyrinth.
in fairness, Commander Keen was far more of a big deal than Epic's ZZT.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
I mean, essentially, the PC, as we've mentioned previously, had a real paucity of platform games, particularly platform games that didn't, suck abominably. And Commander Keen, I was so excited when I got it on a magazine cover disc because, this was just genuinely good, despite its, two annoying sound effects and limited color palette and sprite palettes. It was genuinely a smooth playing experience. So I'm just mentally hearing the sound effects as I'm watching Bree play here.
Sound effects are like.
Okay.
So, it's terrible. It's terrible.
I love the one-eyed guys with the tongues too.
Mm-hmm.
The Horticons.
Me and Stuart were talking about this yesterday, but Ctech, their first game was this game called Galactic Attack. Yeah, this was back when they were called Cyrotech, because as the wonderful Wikipedia here says, was founded by Norman Cyrotech, so he named it sort of after himself. But they kept getting support calls for some other product, like 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's why they changed the name of the company to Ctech. So all the earliest is there a copy of Wizardry out there, Stuart, that's got Cyrotech on the box?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
I don't believe so. But there's some kind of early version of Wizardry that they gave out at some convention or something, which I haven't seen, and that might say Cyrotech for all I know.
Yeah. Anyway, that's cool. The very next game that they worked on was Wizardry. So
this looks like a Star Trek game, by the way.
Yeah,
that's clearly Enterprise.
Some kind of Star Trek ripoff or something. I did search YouTube. There's no footage of this out there anywhere.
No, this is like there was a Star Trek game on the mainframe, like a few different iterations of it. I think they said that they basically took this off a mainframe game essentially, but that's clearly looks like the Enterprise in the middle there.
Something else quite interesting is I know that I'm probably more familiar with UK-based stuff than you guys are, but I think we all have some passing familiarity with Magnetic Scrolls' text adventures. Well, the first Magnetic Scrolls game was the Pawn. They went on to do Guild of Thieves and Fish and a lot of corruption, which a lot of very involved and quite immersive text adventures. But they were also one of the few people developing for the Sinclair QL of all things.
This is Magnetic Scrolls, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Wonderland was actually. I'm talking about Magnetic Scrolls' first game, but Wonderland was its very last. The company broke up, but Wonderland was pretty much through development. So the developers licensed it off to Virgin Interactive, and it was a really, really innovative text and graphics adventure. Wonderland was. I very much enjoyed that.
I need to play it. It looks terrifying.
Well, it was kind of neat. It was kind of neat because you had your inventory in one screen, your like a map in another window, and there's like all these weird.
I think it's one of the few sort of text and graphics adventure interfaces that really stands up well to what Legend was doing with Eric the Unready and so on.
So FYI, that interface is called, I think, the Magnetic Windows interface. And if you've ever seen the Magnetic Scrolls collection, the one that comes in that purplish box, there's 3 games.
My box is more blue than purple, but yes, I have that.
Or maybe I'm colorblind, but anyway. It's Guild of Thieves and Corruption, and I forget what the last one is. Maybe Fish. But in any case,
porn.
Yeah, in any case, that collection has all the games redone into that same Magnetic Windows interface. So if you like that interface or you like latest versions, that's the one to pick up.
And here I'm going to attempt to screen share to show the porn's original interface.
Is that from the QL version, or is that
no, this is an Amiga version, I think.
Okay. I don't know what the QL version looked like. I think that was the original one to your point before.
I'm not sure they actually completed development on the QL because it wasn't a hugely popular platform.
But I believe they did. I don't have it, but I'm pretty sure it's out there.
I do know a specific QL enthusiast who might be able to help on that front. They used to run one of the few magazines dedicated to the QL. But yeah, it was apparently released at the time on a huge variety of platforms. The Spectrum version had no graphics. All the other versions did. But I just think that's an extremely interesting combination of text and graphics for its era.
If we want another UK one, I believe Intro version started in 01, and their first game was Uplink, of which this was the kind of interface, and it was an interesting game. They made massive amount of profits on their first game, where you play a hacker and.
Oh, they're the Prison Architect and Darwinia team, aren't
they? And eventually they were able to just barely stay alive thanks to Steam and Steam sales. That Prison Architect is what now has actually given them, in my opinion, actual real fame. It's the biggest, largest game they've ever sold.
Which just goes to show, if you keep grinding at it for 15 years, your company too can be a marginal success.
Prison Architect is a huge game. They've sold. There's no telling how many copies of that game they sold.
It's got to be at least $20 million. Like, there's not a lot of UK ones that really stand out.
I found out the other day that Rockstar used to be DMA, which I don't think I realized. And I didn't realize that people made GTA made Lemmings, which was a little of a non.
I know.
It's one of the coolest things.
On that subject, I think DMA's first game was a side-scrolling shooter for the Amiga and ST called Menace.
Menace, yeah. I looked it up, yeah.
Because, man, Amiga's just... I mean, the sound on Amiga is just freaking awesome. I want an Amiga so bad.
I have written a feature that might help you.
On how to obtain an Amiga cheaply?
I want Amiga for one reason only, and that is I desperately want the sequel, the expansion to Space Crusade, and it was only ever released on Amiga. I'll buy a whole machine just so I can play that.
So this is like...
was that one of Gremlin's licenses from Games Workshop?
Well, yeah, from Milton Bradley, which from Games Workshop, but yes, it is.
So this game has
Space Crusade.
Interestingly, Gremlin recently, well, not that recently, but have given permission for most of their old Amiga stuff to be distributed for free online.
Oh.
Yes.
Interesting. Oh.
Cool.
So yeah, that's where the grand origins of all things GTA and so on started, I guess.
And Stuart mentioned Legend Entertainment yesterday. What'd you say theirs was?
I believe it's Spellcasting 101. Legend was founded by some folks who did other games before that. Like Bob Bates is one of the founders. He did a couple of games for Infocom with his own company. It wasn't called Legend; it was a different company he had, I believe. He did Arthur, The Quest for Excalibur, one of the games that he did.
I always thought of Legend as this is kind of where Infocom have gone.
Yeah, I mean they try to take over sort of the Infocom banner. That's a wonderful screenshot there. They tried to take over the Infocom Legend, I guess. And then there was other folks that But basically, it wasn't their first games that they made. It was the first game they made as Legend was Spellcasting 101, which is a Steve Moretsky game. And Steve Moretsky obviously came over from Come also. Yeah, that's actually, by the way, I don't know if people have played the Spellcasting series, but since we're talking about it, Legend is a great company in general, and Spellcasting 101 happens to be a really great adventure game for beginners. It's really funny. It's fun. It's just, the puzzles aren't too hard. It's just a cool game. The later ones, 201 and 301, start to get really hard. They're really for serious text adventure masters only. But 101 is very approachable and fun, and it's probably everybody here would like it if they actually played it. It's just
and I think it's got that really sort of charming, slightly saucy, slightly salacious American college set humor that you get in that Revenge of the Nerds type movies from the 80s.
Yeah, it's very similar to that in terms of the tone.
Which I think has a lot of charm, particularly as you probably wouldn't see something like that released so readily these days.